Jaylen Brown got the $304 million supermax. No, $304 million 5-year deal. Now, let's break down this contract. Let's break down what this means for the Celtics. And let's break down what is happening in Celtics land right now. I know I did a video about the Celtics last year, and I know that I'm going over every team. But since this is a breaking news, I will stop, going through every team for this video. And then next one, I'll keep going. I was going to do the Clippers. I was going to make the video right now, but I feel like this is more important. So, what we need to talk about is first, shout out to Jaylen Brown. He got the biggest contract in NBA history, right? Like by far. And now the Celtics are in a hole. So let's talk about it. First, oh my God. Wow, I don't know how to start this, but what are the Celtics doing? First, the Celtics have, I want to say, confirmed that they have about 10 guys on payroll. 11 guys on payroll confirmed for this season, for the 2024 season. And one of those is Jaylen Brown. He's guaranteed $30 million. Right? And what we see from this is that this team has now allowed themselves to get Jaylen Brown with the biggest contract in NBA history. I want to repeat. Jaylen Brown just got the biggest contract in NBA history. It is a $304 million contract worth 5 years. It's worth $60.8 million per year. And it is going to affect the Celtics in every way possible. First, it's going to make it really hard for them to sign anybody. It's going to now keep Jaylen Brown there. And you are giving a guy who, yes, he was all NBA, but even though he was not the first star in your team, you were giving him the biggest, and I repeat, the biggest contract in NBA history when it comes to total money earned. We could see this as a good thing or a bad thing, but in my opinion, we have to take this as that's how much you want Jaylen Brown on your team if you're the Celtics. It's obvious that they believe that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum could win a championship together, and if that's the cost that you want to pay because you have Jason Tatum guaranteed at least until 2025, then you do you. What I want to talk about is what is the future of the Celtics now? Because I'm sorry, when you have a guy who takes up that much money, right? We are talking about that the salary cap every single year is around $150 million. And if you expect the new TV deal to come in, then it's going to be around maybe 170. That's a good cap, right? That means that between all of the players who are on your roster, you could get around $130 to $150 million confirmed that you could just give to them, right, as contracts. Now, that is enough money to make a good team. You see, with that, you could sign $80 million on 2 stars, right? Then use the rest to sign out good role players, or you could waste it all on your stars and then sign minimums. You could sign a bunch of great role players and not sign one legitimate star. There's wiggle room there. Even though, yes, the NBA, the best players in the NBA are getting more expensive, that is due to the NBA and the new CBA not having kicked in yet. But what we can see from this contract is a problem, which in my opinion we have to look at, which is incentives are ruining the league. Look, I'm sorry, and I'm not one to hate, but a secondary player on a team who has never won a championship, right, like the second best player, should never get the biggest contract in NBA history, right? And that's just the facts, right? Like, Jason Tatum is the best player on the Celtics. He is probably the second best player to play in the Eastern Conference maybe first. There's an argument for him to be first. And now you've created an expectancy where by 2026, right, if Jaylen Brown is still on the team and Jason Tatum doesn't accept this player option, he is going to have to demand more money than this. And that is just the facts. I want to say that even though I am kind of hating, because in my opinion, it is a huge and gross overpay for a player who last year costed you your finals appearance because he couldn't dribble with his left hand and had 7 turnovers. In my opinion, I do want to say that shout out to Jaylen Brown. All in all, slowing it down, having just time to think about it, I want to say that Jaylen Brown has been very blessed. It's not his fault that he just happened to have a contract year, the year where the Celtics managed to be able to give him this contract. Like, this was a perfect situation for Jaylen Brown. His contract ended. His contract ends next year. So that means that this year he's up for an extension, right? And he managed to make All-NBA this year. He managed to make an All-Star game this year. He managed to help the Celtics get to an Eastern Conference Finals. And even though he was not the best player at times, he did play his role the best that he's ever played it. He averaged 26 or basically 27 points per game. He averaged it on almost 50% from the field. His 3-point percentage was not that good, and he still played good defense, and he still managed to, even though he had the ball so much more in his hands this season, he got the same amount of assists and 0.2 more turnovers than he did last season. So what this shows me is that in general, he kept his stats the same when it comes to turnovers, assists, and rebounds, but he got way more points and way more possessions and was more effective, right? As he took 2 more shots per game this year. So what we can look at from this season was that Jaylen Brown deserved this contract when it comes to just purely on a stat book. He played great. He was there. He played a lot of games, right? He played like 67 games this year. He played 67 games, literally. He was there for most of the season. When Jason Tatum was not working, Jaylen Brown was the perfect co-star, and when he was, he still was. And he managed to, help the Celtics, get to that point where they could be the second best team in the East and make an Eastern Conference Finals. The only thing with this contract is that what are you going to do with your roster? Like, now you have Kristaps Porzingis, which is worth around $30 or $36 million. You have Jason Tatum, which is worth about the same thing. Then you have Derek White, which you pay around $10 million, right? You have Malcolm Brogdon, which you pay another gross amount of money to, right? Like $10 million. And I'm not saying that these are bad contracts. Derek White actually gets paid around $20 million. Robert Williams gets paid around $11 million. Al Horford, $10 million. Malcolm Brogdon, $22 million. And if you add that all up, last year they were horribly over the salary cap, right? And this year, in the 2024 season, they are going to be over the salary cap. Like, they're going to be $171 million in contracts. This is without that Jaylen Brown contract, which is going to kick in 2025. So, in my opinion, I do believe that this contract by the Celtics was not the smartest decision. Paying a guy like Jaylen Brown superstar money, even though, yes, he has all the incentives, he played well, he had the best season of his career, but paying a guy who's a second option on your team, like the best player of all time, because the person who held the largest contract in NBA history before Jaylen Brown was Nikola Jokic, paying him like Nikola Jokic, more than Nikola Jokic, really messes with the league and what is required for superstars to do. In my opinion, I don't care. I think Jaylen Brown is a great player. But the only thing that I'm realizing and that I think about this contract is that how are you going to make any other signing in the future to help your team? Kristaps Porzingis, you only have him for 2 years guaranteed, right? And most of the contracts, which are expiring by 2026. So by 2026, if you haven't won a championship yet, then will this contract be for nothing? Or will you keep pushing this duo when you have this contract? I don't know. Honestly, these are some questions that we have to ask, but I hope that the Celtics know what they're doing and maybe they're just using this to trade him later in the future if his value goes up. Let's see what the Celtics are going to do.